This is a video that I've been putting off making for a long time. I still don't want to make it, but it's time. It's time, I guess. First, before I get started, smoking Rocky Patel number 6. That one is my first time, and it's okay. It's kind of spicy up front, and listen to that thunder. It's kind of spicy up front. Now it's just hay. Probably not buy again. Wouldn't buy it again. Okay. So today, and I've felt this way for a long time now. Maybe like 8 years. I won't tell you how I came to this conclusion, or maybe I will, but I don't think Satan exists. At least not in the sense that everybody thinks he does. Most of the stuff people think they know about Satan is not in Scripture. It's not in the Bible. Of course, pitchfork, spiked tail, and horns and stuff, whatever. Or that he's the ruler of hell. Doesn't say that in the Bible. In fact, if I remember, I should probably have notes with me if I'm going to talk about the Bible at all. But if I recall correctly, sin and death are defeated, and Satan, who rules over death, they're all thrown into the lake of fire. I think this is in Revelation or Jude or something. And then they die, right? And that's the second death that they talk about, which I'll probably talk about again in a different video because that's kind of weird too. But Satan is translated as it's a word. It's not a name, even though. Okay, so every word for adversary in the Old Testament is Satan, but it doesn't have the in front of it. The Satan, like in Job, talks about the Satan, the accuser, working on behalf of God, accusing people at God's behest, maybe. And in the New Testament, it's actually capitalized, proper name, stuff like that. But most of the instances in the Old Testament are either in Job or they're just words for accuser. Like I think in Chronicles it talks about is it Chronicles? I don't remember which book, but the Philistines are talking about David before he's king. They're like, oh, he's Satan is going to come after us, and David in turn calls them Satan or accuser or enemy, adversary, whatever. But I think in Zechariah it actually says Satan, or it's translated in English to Satan twice. I don't remember what chapter, but it's verse 1 and 2. I think it's Zechariah 3, verse 1 and 2. And it's a vision that Zechariah has with Joshua, the high priest, and an angel, and Satan standing by his side. Who his side is, I don't know. If it's standing by the angel's side or by Joshua's side. But then in the following verses it talks about God has removed that iniquity from him, or his sin, and given him new clothes and stuff like that. So I don't know, but back to me, because I'm selfish. I don't think Satan exists as an entity causing people to sin. I think if I just take the word adversary, and I know I shouldn't lean on my own understanding, so comment below, whatever. I'm my own worst enemy, right? I'm the only thing standing between me and God, my flesh, All sin comes from a selfish place. So it's not like there's anybody outside of me putting ideas in my head and, you know, tempting me. It's myself. I want to do what I want to do. That's it. And Jesus constantly is talking about putting yourself aside. You know, he's the perfect example of living selflessly. He lived for the Father. You know, he prayed all the time about, let this hour pass, you know, take this cup from me. Because he didn't want to do it either, because he was human too. But he was fully God, and you know, that's why he was perfect. He was able to do it, because we can't. We fail all the time. I fail all the time. But, you know, and this is connecting dots that might not exist, but even when Jesus was being tempted in the desert, he knows he's fully man and he knows he's fully God. So, you know, he's walking around, he's hungry, he's like, oh man, I'm God. I could turn this stone into bread and eat. But he's constantly pushing his humanity, his flesh to the side for the will of the Father. And I think, you know, of course, that's where what we should all strive to do. And that's really helped me. You know, I'm far from perfect again. I fail all the time. But looking to Jesus as that example, it's just really helped me a lot to be more selfless and to do more for others and try and do everything for God versus myself. And I'm one of the most selfish people I know, still to this day. But all the other references, and I think it's probably going to get me a lot of flack, but I think there's even one instance in the Bible where it kind of alludes to the fact that the devil and Satan are not the same, or something weird like that. But, you know, Jesus, I think, addresses Satan personally 3 times. Once in the desert when he's being tempted, he says, "Get thee behind me, Satan." And then in Matthew and in Mark, he's talking about the same conversation with Peter, Simon Peter, where Jesus calls him Satan. He says, "Get thee behind me, Satan. You're more concerned about things of the world rather than the kingdom." And I always thought that was interesting too. It's like, what was going through Simon's head? Jesus, the Son of God, just called me Satan. You know? So I think by and large, Satan is used by a lot of people as a scapegoat. And it doesn't necessarily bother me when people say, oh, the enemy's really working in this person, or the enemy's really been in my ear and stuff like that. It's like, well, if you want to call it that, but to me, I'm hyper accountable. Like, everything's my fault, and if it's not, I'm gonna spin it into somehow being my fault, for lots of reasons. But if we're not responsible for our salvation, we have to be responsible for our sin. And the Bible doesn't say that sin comes from Satan or anything like that, but there has to be some level of accountability and responsibility for our own actions and our own failures. Because if not, then what are we doing? We're not responsible for our sin. We're not responsible for our salvation. So what's the point of this? I don't know. So there's nothing standing between God and myself other than me and my ego, my flesh, and what I want to do. And if I can put that aside, then I can better serve God and His kingdom. Oh man. Anyway, Um, yeah, that just really led me to a place of peace. You know, I once I came to this conclusion, I'm not going to say I came up with it, but um, this is what really led me back to the Word, because at this point in my life, my wife was begging me to go back to church, and I said, no, I know everything, there's nothing for me to learn, because I went to private school and I read the Bible a bunch, and this really like got me tearing into the Word, looking for evidence, and trying to figure everything out. So yeah, I just don't think he exists. Revelation aside, that's a crazy book. I'm not gonna say crazy, I'm sorry, God. But Revelation's just like a whole lot of, I like to call it inside jokes. Like, you won't get it unless you know the rest of the Word. And everything has historical and cultural context, stuff going on back then that we now don't know anything about unless you're a historian, which I'm definitely not. But yeah, there's just no one out there, to me, influencing me. But let's just say that he does exist, then, in the context of the Old Testament, he would be acting as an agent of God. And even in, Paul talks about, I think in Romans 9, who can resist his will? Nobody. And if everything was created from the Word, Jesus, God, he had to as well, right? Maybe? I don't know. Probably wrong, as usual. But, going to, I get in debates about this, not often, but sometimes I'll bring it up like an idiot. And people will say, well, what about Lucifer? It talks about the fall of Satan. No, it doesn't. Isaiah 14, I think, it's actually a lament to the king of Babylon. A lament is like a poem or a song, and it's basically mocking him, like, hey, oh thou have how thou have fallen, O Lucifer, son of the morning. And Lucifer, not Satan's name, that's the only time it's mentioned, actually, is I don't remember the Hebrew word for it, but it's the word they used for Venus, which was the last heavenly body in the morning to fall, just like Babylon, the Tower of Babel. He wanted to ascend to be higher than God, and he fell. A lot of people point to Ezekiel 28, talking about how beautiful he was, and he was perfect, and then he fell into sin, and that is about the king of Tyre, who apparently was very vain. And the jewels it describes are actually, if I recall, probably wrong again, the stones in the high priest's breastplate, the Israelites' high priest. But Satan wasn't over music or anything like that, because Ezekiel 28 is not about him. It's just weird. It's weird how people came to a lot of conclusions about him, and I for one would not want to, one, make excuses for my own actions and my own shortcomings, or two, give credit to anyone for anything other than God, because he is sovereign and Lord of all. And like Paul says, who can escape his will? So it's helped me a lot. A lot of people say, well, why do you focus on it? I don't. It's just something to think about, I guess. So tell me how wrong I am. Examples, scripture in the comments if anybody watches this. Let me know what you think. Okay, love you, bye.